She could save herself. But that was a choice she couldn't make. Not anymore. I'm not going anywhere, she said, her voice firm, though her heart raced. You can't scare me. The line went dead. The next day, Adebimpe received more troubling news. Her most trusted ally, Tunde, had gone missing. No one knew where he was. There was no trace of him at the office, no word from him on his phone. It was as if he had vanished without a trace. Her world began to spin out of control. First, the scandal, then the threats. Now, Tunde, this wasn't just business anymore, it was personal. Olumide and his allies were no longer played by the rules. They were making it clear that they would stop at nothing to destroy Adebimpe. Adebimpe's heart sank as she realized the gravity of the situation. Tunde had been her rock, the one person who had always had her back. But now, it seemed that even he had fallen victim to the web of deceit that had been spun around her. If they had taken Tunde, what else were they capable of? Chuka was the only one who could help now. But every time she thought of reaching out to him, doubt clouded her mind. Could he be trusted? What if he was being played just like she was? What if they were all pawns in Olumide's game? But she couldn't waste time. Tunde needed her, and the company needed her. She couldn't fall apart now. She had to find Tunde. She had to fight back. The search for Tunde led Adebimpe down a path she had never expected to take. Late one night, she received an anonymous tip, an address on the outskirts of the city. Someone had seen Tunde locked away in an abandoned warehouse, guarded by men she didn't recognize. With Chuka by her side, Adebimpe prepared for the confrontation. They had no plan, no backup, but the desperation in her heart pushed her forward. Tunde had been more than just an employee. He had been her friend, her confidant. He had stood by her side through everything, and now he needed her. They would get him back, no matter the cost. The moon hung high as they approached the warehouse, their footsteps echoing in the silent night. The building was dark, ominous, with a faint glow of light spilling from cracks in the walls. Adebimpe's pulse raced as they crept closer, the tension thick in the air. We need to be careful, Chuka whispered, his hand resting on her arm. We don't know who we're dealing with. I don't care, Adebimpe replied, her voice sharp. I'm not leaving without him. They reached the entrance, and Adebimpe's heart pounded as she pushed the door open. The warehouse was eerily quiet. The only sound, the faint shuffle of footsteps in the distance. They moved cautiously, trying to remain unseen, but as they rounded the corner, a voice froze them in their tracks. Adebimpe, a cold, familiar voice called from the shadows. I've been expecting you. Adebimpe's blood ran cold as she turned to see Olumide stepping out from the darkness, a smirk playing on his lips. You've made a lot of mistakes, he said, his voice laced with amusement. But the biggest one was thinking you could get away from me. Before she could react, two of Olumide's men stepped forward, blocking her and Chuka from advancing. They were trapped. You've lost, Adebimpe, Olumide said, his tone triumphant. I own you now, your company, your love life, your future, all of it is mine to control. Adebimpe's hands clenched into fists. She had never felt more helpless, but she refused to let him win. The fight wasn't over yet. She will find a way out. She will find a way to take him down. Don't be so sure of yourself, Olumide, she said, her voice steady. This isn't over. As Olumide stepped closer, a sudden noise echoed from the far side of the warehouse. The men guarding the entrance turned their heads, distracted for just a moment. It was all the opening Adebimpe needed. With a quick motion, she grabbed the nearest object, a metal pipe lying on the floor, and swung it with all her strength, knocking one of the guards to the ground. Chuka wasted no time, taking advantage of the distraction to disarm the other guard. They were free, but only for a moment. Go, Adebimpe, Chuka shouted, pulling her toward the exit. They ran, adrenaline coursing through their veins as they made their way toward the street. The sound of footsteps behind them grew louder, but they were close to freedom. As they burst through the door into the cool night air, Adebimpe's heart raced. They were still being hunted, but they had bought themselves a little time. It was only a matter of time before Olumide's men caught up with them. But Adebimpe wasn't about to give up. Not now, not ever. With their lives hanging by a thread, Adebimpe and Chuka found themselves facing the harshest battle of all, not just for survival, but for the future they could build together. As the danger escalated, so did the stakes. Could they navigate the minefield that Olumide had set before them? Or would the price of love be more than they were willing to pay? Adebimpe and Chuka found themselves on the run with nowhere to turn. Olumide's grip on the situation tightened, and every moment felt like they were one step away from being caught. They had no choice but to trust in each other and in the knowledge that their love was the only thing that could save them. But as they navigated the darkness of Lagos, Adebimpe couldn't help but feel the weight of all her choices crashing down on her. She hadn't been able to save her company. Her empire was crumbling, and despite all her efforts, Olumide had orchestrated a takeover behind the scenes. He had manipulated her investors, her board, and now. But there was one thing Olumide hadn't counted on: Adebimpe's refusal to back down. The betrayal of her closest allies, the attacks on her reputation, the threats to her life, they had all brought her to this point. She would not let him win. They had just reached a safe house, a modest apartment on the edge of the city, when the door slammed open and in rushed Tunde. He was alive, but his face was pale, his eyes shadowed with fear. They know everything, Adebimpe. Tunde gasped, his voice shaky. Olumide is taking over. It's all gone. The company, the investors, he's pulled every string. He even has leverage over the board members. They are all bought and paid for. Adebimpe's breath caught in her throat. What do you mean? How is that even possible? Someone on the inside, someone close to you, Tunde whispered, his voice faltering. It was never just about business. They've been using your personal life against you, and they've got something on Chuka too, something they've been holding over him. Chuka's face darkened. What do they have on me? Tunde looked at him, his face filled with regret. They know about your family, your father's past, the financial troubles that were swept under the rug. They are threatening to expose everything. Adebimpe turned to Chuka, her heart racing. Is this true? Chuka hesitated. His eyes clouded with a mixture of anger and shame. It's true. My family has a history of financial ruin. It's something I've fought my whole life to overcome. But Olumide is using it to control me, to manipulate me. Adebimpe's mind spun. This was bigger than they had ever anticipated. Olumide wasn't just taking over her company. He was trying to destroy everything that mattered to her, including her relationship with Chuka. He wanted to break them both, to tear apart the very foundation of their lives. As the hours passed, Adebimpe and Chuka plotted their next move. They knew they had to act quickly before Olumide could solidify his control. Every move they made had to be strategic, every step calculated. But as the tension mounted, Adebimpe could feel the weight of their situation closing in on her. We need leverage, Chuka said, his voice low and resolute. We need something that can make Olumide back off. If we can find out how deep his connections go, we might be able to turn the tables. I have a few contacts left, Tunde said, his eyes scanning the room as if searching for an answer that wasn't there. But we can't rely on just one source. We need to hit him where it hurts. His network, Adebimpe said, her voice firm. Olumide has been playing a dangerous game with investors, with the media. If we can expose his connections, maybe we can stop him. The plan was risky, dangerous even. But Chuka's phone rang, interrupting the silence. He picked it up, his face going pale as he listened. No, he muttered under his breath. His expression hardened. It's over. They found out where we are. The safe house had been compromised. The walls were closing in. By the time they reached the meeting point with their contact, the tension was unbearable. Every step they took felt like a countdown to the final confrontation. The dark alley where they had arranged to meet was quiet, the sound of their footsteps echoing through the empty street. They had no backup, no reinforcements. It was just the three of them with everything on the line. And then, from the shadows, a figure emerged. Adebimpe, Olumide's voice rang out smooth and cold from the darkness. You think you can defeat me? That you can outsmart me? You're nothing but a pawn in this game. Adebimpe's heart pounded in her chest. This ends tonight, Olumide, she said, her voice steady but filled with fury. You've taken everything from me, but I'm not going to let you destroy me or my future. Olumide chuckled, stepping into the dim light. You think you can stop me? You think this pathetic little stunt will change anything? You're out of options, Adebimpe. And as for you, Chuka, you're just as much a part of this as she is. You both have far too much to lose. Suddenly, there was a shift in the atmosphere. Tunde, who had been standing off to the side, stepped forward. His face was grim. You're wrong, Olumide, he said, his voice cutting through the tension. We've already exposed your dealings. We've got enough evidence to bring you down. The investors are turning against you. Your network is already collapsing. Adebimpe saw the flicker of panic in Olumide's eyes as he processed Tunde's words. For the first time, the smugness that had defined him began to crack. But before he could respond, Chuka stepped forward, his expression one of steely determination. This ends now, Olumide, Chuka said, his voice calm but powerful. You've made the mistake of thinking you control everything, but we've taken back the power. In that moment, Adebimpe realized something crucial. She wasn't just fighting for her company or her love. She was fighting for her future. And with Chuka by her side, she was ready to face whatever came next. The aftermath was swift. Olumide's empire of manipulation and deceit crumbled as the evidence against him mounted. His connections, once his greatest asset, turned against him as Adebimpe and Chuka exposed the truth. The board of directors, realizing the extent of the deception, revoked Olumide's influence over Adebimpe's company, restoring her control. But the victory was bittersweet. Adebimpe's company would survive, but at a great cost. The battle had taken a toll on her and on her relationship with Chuka. Their love had been tested in ways neither of them had anticipated. But through it all, they had emerged stronger. As the dust settled, Adebimpe stood at the helm of her company once again. But this time, she felt different. She had learned that love was not just about triumphs and victories. It was about trust, sacrifice, and resilience. She turned to Chuka, who was standing beside her, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. We've been through hell, she said, her voice soft but filled with conviction. But we made it. Chuka smiled, his eyes filled with warmth. We made it together, and that's what matters. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, Adebimpe felt at peace. She had found love, not in the man who sought to possess her wealth, but in the one who had fought for her heart. Together, they would face whatever came next, stronger than ever before. And this time, they would face it as equals. Months had passed since the dramatic showdown with Olumide, and Adebimpe's life had started to settle into a rhythm. The turmoil, the threats, and the betrayals were now behind her. But the scars remained, reminders of the war she had fought to reclaim her company, her reputation, and her future. Yet, amid all the chaos, one thing had remained constant. Chuka, he was no longer just a suitor, a man who had once been a part of her world. He was her partner, her equal, the one person who had stood by her side when everything else had crumbled. Adebimpe sat in her office, now filled with a new sense of purpose. She had been reinstated as the CEO of her company, and the path ahead seemed brighter than ever. The board was supportive, her investors had returned, and even the media had started to shift their tone. The public had rallied behind her as a symbol of resilience. The woman who had once been seen only for her wealth and status was now admired for her strength, intelligence, and ability to overcome even the darkest of storms. But as Adebimpe reflected on all that she had gained, her thoughts turned to Chuka. He had proven himself in ways she hadn't thought possible. His loyalty, his love had never wavered, even when the world around them had tried to tear them apart. One evening, after a long day at the office, Adebimpe sat in her favorite corner of the living room, sipping tea, when she heard the familiar sound of Chuka's footsteps. He had come over to her apartment more frequently, often staying late after his own work to ensure she was never alone. To share, Chuka nodded, but there was something different in his eyes. I've been thinking about us, he began, his voice gentle but serious. We've been through a lot together, more than most people ever experience in a lifetime. Adebimpe looked up, sensing the weight in his words. She knew that what he was about to say would change everything, and she was ready for it. Chuka, we've already faced the hardest test, haven't we? I don't think anything could break us now, she said softly, her heart racing at the thought of what was to come. Chuka dropped down on one knee in front of her, his expression full of love and sincerity. Adebimpe gasped, her heart swelling with emotion. Adebimpe Adebeji, Chuka said, his voice filled with conviction. You've shown me a love and strength that I could never have imagined. I've seen you at your lowest, and I've seen you rise above it all. I don't want to just stand by your side in the midst of challenges. I want to be there for you in everything for the rest of our lives. Will you marry me? Tears filled Adebimpe's eyes as she looked at the man she had fought so hard to protect, the man who had become her everything. She had faced the trials of her life, and through it all, Chuka had never faltered. He had given her the greatest gift of all, the chance to love and be loved without conditions, without fear. Yes, Adebimpe whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Yes, I'll marry you. The moment felt like a dream, like the culmination of everything she had ever wanted. She reached out to take his hand, and in that instant, the world outside no longer mattered. All that mattered was the future they would build together. The months that followed were filled with joy and anticipation. Adebimpe and Chuka's engagement was a topic of excitement, not just within their circle, but across the country. The public, who had once seen Adebimpe as a powerful CEO, now saw her as a woman deeply in love with a partner who supported her unconditionally. Their love story, which had weathered the fiercest storms, was now an inspiration to many. The wedding planning was a whirlwind. Adebimpe had never been one to indulge in extravagant displays, but this was different. This day was about them, their love, their journey, and the life they would build. She wanted it to be intimate, yet memorable, with the people who had stood by them through thick and thin. Chuka was involved in every step of the planning, eager to share in the joy of the occasion. Their wedding would be a blend of tradition and modernity, a celebration of their Nigerian heritage and the new life they were beginning together. The day arrived, and it was everything they had dreamed of. The ceremony was held at a beautiful chapel, decorated with soft floral arrangements, and the air was filled with the sound of music and laughter. Adebimpe, dressed in a breathtaking white gown, looked more radiant than ever. Her eyes sparkled with happiness as she walked down the aisle, her heart beating with anticipation. And there, At the altar stood Chuka, his eyes locked on us, filled with nothing but love. The vows they exchanged were personal, heartfelt, and full of promise. They spoke of love that was patient and kind, of love that endured even in the face of adversity. It was a love that had been tested and it had emerged stronger. As they shared their first kiss as husband and wife, the crowd erupted into applause. It was a moment of triumph, not just for them, but for everyone who had supported them along the way. The months that followed their wedding were blissful. Adebimpe and Chuka settled into their new life together with a renewed sense of purpose and happiness. They both continued to run their respective businesses, but now they did so as partners in every sense of the word. Their love, once tested by the harshest of circumstances, had blossomed into something beautiful and enduring. Adebimpe found that even though she had rebuilt her company from the ashes, her true fulfillment lay not in her success, but in the love and companionship she shared with Chuka. Together, they began planning for their future, building a legacy, not just in business, but in the way they would inspire others. Chuka too thrived. His relationship with Adebimpe had given him a sense of purpose and stability he had never known. With her by his side, he knew that no obstacle was too great for them to overcome. Their story was one of resilience, of love overcoming all odds. And as they looked to the future, hand in hand, they knew that the best chapters of their life were still ahead of them. The love that had once seemed impossible was now the foundation of everything they had built together. Thank you for watching. What do you think about this story? Drop your comment in the comment section below. Indeed, love is sweet when you are with the right person. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel for more interesting stories.